November 1966. Point Pleasant, West Virginia. A small town, surrounded by forests, abandoned roads, and the dark waters of the Ohio River. But something unusual had begun appearing in the night skies. Witnesses described a massive winged figure over 2 meters tall, with glowing red eyes, silently watching from the darkness. Some claimed it chased their cars through isolated highways. Others believed it appeared moments before tragedy struck. And after the collapse of the Silver Bridge, the legend became something far more terrifying, because many started asking the same question. Was the Mothman only a myth or a warning? In the autumn of 1966, Point Pleasant was a quiet town located at the meeting point of the Ohio and Kanawha rivers. In West Virginia, like many small American towns of the time, life there was simple, isolated, and largely uneventful. But just outside the town, hidden behind dense forest and abandoned roads, stood a place known locally as the TNT area, a former military site built during the Second World War, where explosives and ammunition had once been stored. After the war, the area had been abandoned, leaving behind concrete bunkers, collapsed structures, and miles of empty woodland. Over time, the place developed a disturbing reputation among locals. Strange sounds, unusual lights, and the feeling that something was watching from the darkness. Then, on the night of November 15th, 1966, 2 young couples driving through the TNT area claimed they saw something standing near the old generators. According to their testimony, the figure was large, gray, with massive wings and glowing red eyes. What happened next would become one of the most famous cryptid cases in American history. On the evening of November 15th, 1966, 4 young residents of Point Pleasant set out for a drive. Roger Scarberry, Linda Scarberry, Steve Mallette, and Mary Mallette were traveling through the abandoned TNT area, a vast complex of old military buildings and storage bunkers left behind after the Second World War. For most local residents, it was a place best avoided after dark. The roads were isolated, the structures were decaying, and the surrounding woods seemed to swallow every sound. That night, nothing appeared out of the ordinary. The group drove through the area, talking casually, following the narrow roads that wound between the abandoned buildings. Then something caught their attention. Near one of the old concrete structures, they noticed 2 bright red lights. At first, they assumed they belonged to a vehicle, or perhaps an animal hidden in the darkness. But the lights did not move like headlights, and they did not reflect like an animal's eyes. As the car approached, the lights appeared to rise from the ground. The group slowed down, trying to understand what they were seeing. And then, they noticed a figure near one of the abandoned structures. According to the witnesses, it was a large gray creature, humanoid in appearance, with a broad body and enormous folded wings. They later estimated it stood over 2 meters tall, but what they remembered most were its eyes, large, bright red, and glowing in the darkness. For a moment, nobody spoke. The creature remained motionless, watching. Then panic took over. Roger turned the car around, and the group sped away into the night. What they had seen that evening would become one of the most famous sightings in the history of cryptozoology. The group did not stop driving until they were well beyond the TNT area. According to their account, fear had completely taken over. As they sped along the dark roads, they believed the creature was following them. Roger Scarberry later claimed that the figure moved with extraordinary speed, keeping pace with the vehicle as it accelerated through the night. At times, it appeared just beyond the headlights. At others, it seemed to vanish into the darkness. The group eventually reached safety, shaken, confused, and struggling to explain what they had witnessed. What happened next would transform a frightening personal experience into a public story. The witnesses reported the incident to local authorities, and before long, word of the encounter began to spread through Point Pleasant. Most people were skeptical, others were intrigued, but within days, the story would reach the local newspaper, and once it appeared in print, the events of that November night would become impossible to ignore. In the days that followed the publication of the article, something unusual began to happen in Point Pleasant. What had started as the frightening account of 4 young witnesses was no longer a private story. People throughout the town began talking about the strange encounter. The article spread quickly. Copies of the newspaper passed from hand to hand. Conversations filled diners, gas stations, barber shops, and grocery stores. Most residents remained skeptical. Some dismissed the story as a misunderstanding. Others believed the witnesses had simply mistaken a large bird for something far more extraordinary. But not everyone was unconvinced. Within days, new reports began to emerge. Several residents claimed they had also seen an unusual figure near the abandoned TNT area. Descriptions varied in detail, yet certain elements appeared again and again. A tall shape, large wings, and glowing red eyes visible in the darkness. The sightings were no longer limited to a single group of witnesses. The mystery appeared to be spreading. As November progressed, stories of strange encounters became increasingly difficult to ignore. Some reports came from hunters, others from families driving at night. A few witnesses insisted that whatever they had seen seemed almost curious, watching from a distance before disappearing into the darkness. Local authorities found themselves receiving more calls than usual. Most reports offered little evidence, no photographs, no physical traces, only testimonies, and yet, the number of accounts continued to grow. For the people of Point Pleasant, a question was beginning to take shape. If the first witnesses had not imagined what they saw, then what exactly was hiding in the forest beyond the town? As November gave way to December, the mystery of Point Pleasant showed no signs of fading. The creature had become the subject of countless conversations throughout the town, in local diners, at gas stations, and around family dinner tables. People debated what was really happening. Some believed the witnesses had encountered an unknown animal. Others suspected the entire affair had been exaggerated. Yet the reports continued, and with every new account, the legend grew. For many residents, the question was no longer whether something unusual had been seen. The question was what it might be. Point Pleasant had become a town caught between curiosity and fear. And as winter approached, few could have imagined that the strangest chapter of the story was still to come. As the weeks passed, the sightings became only part of the story. many residents reported something far more difficult to explain: a growing sense of dread, an uneasiness that appeared without warning. Some claimed they felt watched, even when they were completely alone. Others spoke of restless nights, strange dreams, and a persistent feeling that something was lurking just beyond sight. Whether these experiences were connected to the creature or simply the result of fear spreading through the community remains impossible to know. But by the end of 1966, Mothman was no longer just a mysterious figure reported in the woods. It had become a presence, a shadow hanging over Point Pleasant, and for many residents, the fear was becoming very real. On December 15, 1967, everything changed. During the evening rush hour, the Silver Bridge collapsed into the icy waters of the Ohio River. 46 people lost their lives. The disaster shocked the entire nation. For the residents of Point Pleasant, the tragedy arrived after more than a year of strange sightings, unexplained encounters, and growing fear. Almost immediately, questions began to emerge. Was the timing simply a coincidence, or had the creature somehow become connected to the disaster? No evidence ever established a link. Yet for many witnesses, the collapse marked the moment when the legend of Mothman became something far larger than a local mystery. More than half a century later, the mystery of Mothman remains unsolved. Over the years, several explanations have been proposed. Some researchers believe witnesses may have mistaken a large bird, seen under unusual conditions. Others argue that fear, rumor, and expectation transformed ordinary events into an extraordinary legend. And for those who reject conventional explanations, Mothman remains something far more mysterious. Yet despite decades of debate, no theory has ever fully explained every report. What the people of Point Pleasant experienced in the 1960s may never be fully understood. Whether Mothman was an unknown creature, a misunderstanding, or something far stranger, the answer remains hidden. More than half a century later, Point Pleasant still remembers, and the mystery remains. Perhaps the truth lies somewhere between fact and folklore, between history and myth. Some mysteries refuse to disappear,